We begin tonight's bulletin with some good news. As from the 1st of January 2018, Ghanaian farmers will be able to resume exports of all plant commodities to the EU market. This follows the European Commission's decision to lift the current ban on exports of 5 plant commodities from Ghana to the EU market on the 31st of October 2017. The 5 Ghanaian plants, chili pepper, bottle gourds, laffa gourds, bitter gourds, and eggplants, will from the 1st of January 2018 have duty-free and quota-free access to the EU market like any other product from Ghana. The 5 commodities will, however, have to fulfill the EU phytosanitary legislation to ensure the freedom of quarantine pests. The decision follows an audit undertaken from the 12th to the 21st of September 2017, that was last month, by the Directorate General for Health and Food Safety of the European Commission, and evolution of the numbers of import interceptions with quarantine pests notified by member states for commodities not subject to the ban. Well, meanwhile, Minister for Agri, Dr. Efia Koto, says government at a recent graphic business, Stanbic Bank business breakfast meeting, announced a possible date for the lifting of the ban on export of vegetables to the EU market in November. This follows a review by a delegation from the EU last September.
We have a financial arrangement with them by telling them that they can take away the seeds and the fertilizers at half price and come and pay the difference after the harvest. It means that we put some trust in the farmers. And the beneficiaries are seeing the effect in terms of the high yields that they are producing their crops at. It means that efficiency has gone up, and that should be enough incentive for them to be able to pay the difference so that they can benefit again next year from the same scheme.
Planting for food and jobs, how far are we set? Is it in progress? Is it in motion?
Of course, it is in progress. It is in progress, and the results are being showing are very, very, very impressive, especially if you go to Upper West, Upper East, Northern regions. I mean, they are the ones who actually took the program to heart in spite of the lateness of this coming and so on. They are 2 months, you know.
Now, the Ghana Institute of Procurement and Supply has launched a new code of ethics for practicing professionals to prevent procurement processes that result in financial loss to the state. The chief executive of the Ghana Institute of Procurement and Supply, Collins Ajiman Sapong, in an address noted that the newly launched code of ethics will, among others, help prevent financial loss to businesses and the state. Joy Business Bismarck Ewusa was at the event and has filed this report.
In recent times, public procurement processes have resulted in wanton dissipation of national resources, while some individuals have unduly benefited in the process of acquiring products for the organization at the expense of the nation. This is partly because there was no ethical considerations guiding the actions of purchasing professionals. It is against this backdrop that the Ghana Institute of Procurement and Supply, GIPS, has launched a new code of ethics and conduct for the procurement and supply professionals and practitioners in the country. In an address, Chief Executive of GIPS, Collins Ajiman Sapong, explains some of the objectives of the initiative.
Procurement and supply chain is not just about obtaining goods, services, and works, but also getting all the facets of obtaining rightly price, time, quantity, quality, and source, as well as striking a balance with our conducts and behaviors during procurement process to achieve value for money. Government and all other agencies need to strictly ensure that their staff who are involved in procurement and supply, irrespective of their professional and educational background, sign this code of ethics to help monitor and streamline unethical practices, which is costing our dear country millions of cedis.
Chief Executive of the Public Procurement Authority, Mr. A.B. Ajay, on his part, noted that the authority is in talks with the Public Services Commission to establish a career path progression for procurement practitioners in the public service.
The authority is working in close collaboration with Public Service Commission to establish a career path progression for procurement practitioners in the public service that will enable the public sector to attract and retain high-level professionals. Under this new scheme, Mr. Chairman, a special procurement class shall be established, and it will be headed by the Public Procurement Authority. This, we believe, will go a long way to motivate procurement professionals who wish to join the public service to work hard and rise through the ranks to the highest grade of Director Procurement.
The Code of Ethics and Conduct was initiated by some government officials and some officials of the procurement agencies.
Government has reconstituted the steering committee for the Rural Enterprises Program. According to the Trade Minister, Alan Chomanteng, project partners have agreed to renew their commitment to move it from a project into a program following a successful review of the second phase, which ended in 2012.
We've found it necessary to put together a new steering committee in terms of membership, but the objectives and the mandate of the steering committee remains the same. I recognize that many of you may be new to this program, and so it might be useful just to put what this committee is about in an appropriate context. The Rural Enterprises Program was first introduced in this country in 1995. That was the first phase of the program. And it is a collaborative effort between the government of Ghana, IFAD, and then ADB, not Agric Development Bank, African Development Bank. So these are the key partners of the Rural Enterprises Program. Now, the first phase of the program ran through from 1995 to 2002. But in terms of development assistance language, it was classified at that time as a project. And then there was a second phase of the project, which then extended from 2003 to 2012. So that was the second phase of the project. And as is usually the case with project management, there is always a midterm review and then a terminal review of the project. And depending on the level of success or otherwise of the program, then a decision is made by the programs or project sponsors either to renew the program or project or to close the project down. So in this case, the reviews were done and there was a decision to extend the project to a second phase. So that's how come we have phase 2 of the project. Now, at the end of the second phase, the partners decided to renew the program or the project, but within the context of an expanded portfolio of services and activities. And so then it moved from a project into a program.
9 small and medium enterprises have been selected to take part in the Cosmos Innovation Center Business Booster Program, which has kick-started in Accra. The Business Booster Program is one of the major CSR projects of oil and gas exploration and production company Cosmos Energy, and is aimed at helping SMEs in the agri sector scale up. The Cosmos Innovation Center Business Booster Program will be executed through bootcamps, a mentorship support program, and introductions to potential investors and financial advisors over the next 5 months. The program will also focus on selecting and working with Ghanaian agribusiness ventures to validate and refine their business models, prepare the companies for future growth prospects, and enhance access to capital to build their businesses. Vice President and Country Manager of Cosmos Energy, Joe Mensah, who spoke to Joy Business at the launch of the Business Booster Program, explained why the focus on the agric sector.
By nature, Ghana, from beginning of time, has been an agric country. We just took our eyes off the ball. Agric used to be more than 70% of our GDP, and it went all the way down to 19%. We need to bring it back up. And once we bring it up, we can feed ourselves and be able to export more food. Take a company like Blue Skies today. Blue Skies is exporting stuff to Europe every single day. They have containers full on Emirates going out, on KLM going out every single day. They are importing fruits. Why? We can grow all of that in here ourselves. Why should they be importing mangoes and stuff every day into the country? It's unacceptable because we have the fertile land, we have the sunshine, we have the rain. What else do we need? It's just the discipline and the know-how to make it happen.
Over 170 applications were received, out of which 30 were shortlisted for interviews, with 9 companies ultimately getting the nod to join the new program. Owners of some participating SMEs shared the expectations ahead of the program.
Our MEC link is into the production of vegetables in greenhouses. We produce cherry tomatoes, bell peppers, capsicum peppers in all greenhouses, and they are organic.
Okay. So what are your expectations going into the boot camp?
My expectation in going to the boot camp is to equip me to learn, be able to redefine my business model, and also ensure that I'm able to compete on the global market.
So my business basically process and package Ghanaian foods. I'm looking to get experience from other people, what other people have done. I read a lot, but it's not everything you can find in the book. So I'm looking forward to getting all that together and leave here a better person, entrepreneur, CEO.
Frontier Marketing Advisor Dodi Seidu is one of the mentors for the program.
There's one thing about businesses. Businesses are like human beings. They go through different stages. So there's a time where you start, there's a time where you kind of like get to adolescence, and there's a time where you mature. And through all those stages, there are different needs that the business has. And so a booster program is to help companies that have passed startup but need extra push in terms of technical input, finance, and even access to certain type of people who can help them to get to markets. So the booster program is very significant for businesses that have been working but want to actually grow, or what we say in business, they want to scale up.
Cosmos Energy is collaborating with partners Uncharted and Impact Hub Accra to run the program. Now, telecommunication company Vodafone is partnering the Ghana Statistical Service to build a database that would support the country to use valuable metrics in making better analysis and predictions for movement around the country. For some time now, providing data on victims in times of disaster has been an issue the Ghana Statistical Service is grappling with. It is the chief executive of Vodafone Ghana, Yolanda Zuleika Cuba, says this initiative would uniquely position the country as a trailblazer across the continent.
When you use big data, is that you actually learn specific patterns on how, for example, people move. So if you understand how people move, then you're able to actually put in place interventions that are able to more effectively actually deal with the situation. How you deploy resources actually then follows where the people are. So if people, for example, tend to move to a specific area over Christmas and there's an epidemic that outbreaks there, then you know that after that they go here, after that they tend to go here. So your response time and your ability to respond is actually greatly enhanced as well. And also, I mean, what we we want to do ultimately with FlowMinder is use artificial intelligence on top of what we've got, just in terms of movement of data, just to say, can we predict a lot of things that can happen? So the example I gave today, for example, people tend to actually search for symptoms before they actually know, before something becomes an epidemic. The symptoms are there. As soon as a number of people actually start looking, having similar kind of symptoms, that means there is a specific kind of issue that will arise in that area. So can then government actually deploy healthcare facilities, healthcare response before something becomes an epidemic? So that preemptive kind of way of responding makes us more effective as a government and also as corporate in order to be able to help government respond.
Meanwhile, Group External Affairs Head of Vodafone, Joachim Rita, is optimistic the initiative would support Ghana's drive to undertake significant reforms to meet the Sustainable Development Goals.
We have this data about people because they make phone calls that leave a trace in the computer system. We already have that. The only difference is now, compared to all the different safeguards that we already have in place with respect to cybersecurity, with respect to privacy, with respect to data retention and data protection, is that we then, before anything is passed over, we first anonymize it, so no individual can at all be identified. Then we aggregate it, so it becomes patterns of thousands of people and how they move around. And that's only that is transferred over for the application of better policies. So no individual data is ever passing from Vodafone to any of the other partners. And therefore, there is absolutely no change in terms of exposure of individuals and their data. And we would never, by the way, do any project that would lead to that effect, ever.
We are turning to the banking space. Some troubling news coming to us. Some of the country's troubled banks have gotten back into a situation that can be described as disturbing financial distress. This could force the Bank of Ghana to move and appoint some persons to directly supervise the day-to-day administration of these banks. The following report highlights some of the issues and the possible solutions.
Sources say the expected move by the Bank of Ghana is to prevent the situation where a license withdrawal could be possible or the last resort if all efforts to save these banks fail, just like what happened to the UT and Capital banks. The current situation, Joy Business understands, has been compounded by bad corporate governance practices, rising loan defaults, government indebtedness, and some panic withdrawals that hit these banks over fears that they could collapse. This has affected the operations of these institutions, making it difficult to meet their day-to-day financial obligations. Persons with knowledge of the Bank of Ghana's operations say the regulator wants to be careful with any move in order not to send wrong signals to the market. This is despite some sort of pressure coming from the IMF. There are also concerns that any moves by the regulator, if not well handled, could worsen current challenges facing the banking sector. Even though Joy Business knows the two banks said to be in distress, we would hold on to the names for now. Some persons close to the regulator say there's no need to panic. The assurance comes because there have been arguments that reports like these could worsen the situation. But a highly placed source says the public should look at how the Bank of Ghana handled the UT and Capital Bank's issue, and the fact that nobody lost his or her deposit should assure them their funds are indeed safe and there's no need to panic. Some of these troubled banks have also argued their situation could stabilize if government settles debts owed them. Joy Business understands that 12 banks are exposed to the almost 10 billion cedi energy sector debt.
Well, government has settled on the interest we paid to investors wanting to participate in today's domestic dollar bond. The 3-year paper opened this morning and should be accepting bids from investors until this Thursday. But will this fundraising exercise impact on the public debt, and why are some market watchers not pleased with this auction? There's more in this next report.
Sources say government has settled on 6.25% as the interest to be paid on the amount that will be secured from investors by Thursday. Joy Business is learning that government is looking at getting 50 to 100 million Ghana cedis from just domestic investors who are allowed to participate in the 3-year government paper. So let's look at cost of raising this bond. If government is able to get just 50 million, then that would result in $3.1 million being paid to investors as interest over the next 3 years. However, if it secures $100 million, then that would result in $6.2 million as interest for the next 3 years. But don't forget about the principal that would also be paid at the end of a year with all these scenarios presented. Last year, government raised a similar domestic dollar bond over a 2-year period but paid 6% and actually got $94 million. Sources say the bond is aimed at improving government's domestic financial needs and developing alternative source of funding for the country. However, this bond auction has not gone down well with all the players in the financial space. There are some who are worried about the impact of this on rising public debt, encouraging the dollarization of the economy, and the fact that it could cost the country more in paying the debt if the cedi should depreciate sharply in the next 2 years. The bond auction is being done through the book building approach, and that whole transaction is being handled by Barclays, Stanbic Bank and finance house Strategic Africa Securities.
All right, we've been getting some perspective from investment and financial analyst Mama Idrisu. He spoke to marketplace host Emmanuel Abuajeriafe. He shared some thoughts on the implications of issuing a domestic dollar bond.
I don't see fatigue in investments across the world. Capital will move to where there is return that will meet investors' expectation. Like I heard somebody mention, if the CD denominated bond that just ended had a return of 22, 23, 24, 25, government would have to return, or ISLA would have to return some investors' monies to them because there will be an oversubscription.
Okay.
All what money wants is the reduction in risk, ability to receive my money at close of business or close of term of the bond, and the return that I expect to receive. And if you meet these 3 conditions and the horizon or the number of years that the bond is supposed to spend is good for the person, trust me, the person will invest. If you take the ISLA bond, they are looking for money for 10 years. Me and you know that we have seen government change in 4 years. We have seen government change in 8 years. We may probably be seeing government change in 12 years. And this bond is going above that level of years. And we are looking at probably a partisan board representation on the ISLA board. Okay. Everybody knows that even heads of civil service vacate their seats when government change. So definitely the board will change, and that will affect corporate governance going above 8 years or 4 years. And when this happens, people have fears that their monies will be at risk, and these are some of the things we should have addressed.
Time to bring you our budget watch. 10 different taxes in the 2017 budget were either scrapped or reviewed to bring some relief to businesses and Ghanaians in general. One such tax was the 10% import duty on imported spare parts. The Association of Spare Parts Dealers says prices have not changed much in the market after the scrapping of the tax. This is because the cedi is still performing poorly against the dollar. They're also claiming that the retail market has been taken over by foreigners.
8 days to the reading of the 2018 budget, and here in Abose Okai is business as usual. As Finance Minister read the 2017 budget, one of the key things that was on the items of tax removals was, well, the removal of import duty on spare parts.
we want to find out from spare parts dealers about a few days towards the 2018 budget, how this removal impacted their business, what their expectations are for the 2018 budget, and if indeed this will be honored as we inch towards the 15th of November, which is the budget date.
At the market, we gathered prices had not changed much after the finance minister's announcement of a total scrap of the import duty tax on spare parts. That meant striking out one tax out of the 15 taxes spare parts dealers had to pay before clearing their goods. So our question to the public relations officer at the Spare Parts Association was, after that huge amount was taken from the list, did it make any impact on their businesses?
I sell Japanese vehicle spare parts. Let's say water pump. Let's take water pump for instance for Mitsubishi Lancer. You know, before the budget was announced, I was selling this water pump for 120 Ghana cedis, and because the 10% has been taken off, what I'm supposed to do is to at least like reduce it to maybe about 100. But currently I've been able to reduce maybe about 10 cedis. So now if you give me maybe 110 or 105, I'll accept it.
The cedi has been performing abysmally against the dollar, with some outrageous rate in 2016 at 4.8 cedis in March and now 4.4 cedis to the dollar.
Our cedi, which has not been able to match the foreign exchange. So what we are calling the government to do is to try as much as possible, to put measures together which will be able to, address this situation, so that we in the spare parts industry will be able to reduce our price to the barest minimum or to the 15 to 20% that we envisage, so that those who comes to buy the spare parts, will enjoy that rebates.
For some spare parts dealers, they have not reduced their prices because they have not brought in goods from abroad.
So, since the budget was read in 2017, have you reduced any of your items?
Not yet.
We will bring you a full edition of that report later in our subsequent bulletins. That'll be it for Business Live. My name is Darryl Kwao. You're back same time tomorrow.